I thought my graduation party would be the one day my family finally saw me, really saw me. I walked into a house full of balloons, smiles, and the smell of Mom's famous chocolate cake. For a second, I believed it. Then she brought it out. Big, glossy letters in bright blue icing. "Congratulations, loser." My dad laughed. My sister laughed harder. And I just stood there frozen while the people who were supposed to love me most turned my biggest achievement into a punchline. That was the exact moment I decided they would never get that power over me again. I walked into my parents' living room that Saturday evening, still wearing the blazer I'd worn to my graduation earlier that afternoon. The place was packed: neighbors, church friends, even Dad's coworkers. Blue and silver streamers hung from the ceiling. For a split second, I thought, maybe this time will be different. Mom greeted me with that bright smile she saves for public occasions. "Look at our girl. First college graduate in the family." Her voice carried across the room and people clapped. My chest warmed. Maybe they were proud after all. I mingled, hugged a few people, accepted handshakes. Dad slapped my back like I'd just won the Super Bowl. Kylie, my older sister, gave me a hug that felt more like a pat-down, then drifted off to joke with her friends. Then Mom disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she reemerged, holding a cake big enough for a wedding. Everyone gathered around. My heart swelled, until I saw the words in bright blue icing. "Congratulations, loser." It was like the room tilted. Dad laughed first, loud and deep. Kylie doubled over, wiping tears from her eyes. A few guests exchanged awkward glances, but no one said a thing. I froze. My heart sank. My hands started shaking. "Come on, Em," Dad chuckled. "It's just a joke. You know you're our overachiever." That. I looked at the cake, then at them, and something inside me just went still. I picked up my champagne glass, tapped it gently. Everyone quieted. "Thanks," I said, my voice steady, "for being exactly who I thought you were." A few people laughed, thinking I was joining in, but I wasn't. I put the glass down, grabbed my bag, and headed for the door. Mom called after me, "Emma, don't be so sensitive." I didn't even turn around. Just before I stepped outside, I said over my shoulder, "You'll figure it out soon enough." The summer air hit my face as I walked to my car. My chest felt tight, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. I knew right then that something was about to change. I got in, started the engine, and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. All those years of biting my tongue, of being the good daughter who helped out, who stayed quiet, they were over. And deep down, I think they knew it too. I didn't drive far, just to the community college parking lot where I used to practice parallel parking. The asphalt still had faint white chalk lines from when Dad was teaching Kylie, not me. I sat there with the engine humming, watching moths pinball around the lamp. And then, the memories started crowding in. When we were kids, Kylie got a backyard birthday with a bounce house because she needed a win after getting a B in biology. When I earned straight A's, Dad said, "Don't make your sister feel bad." Mom added, "Be gracious." Emmy. I learned to tuck joy into small, silent places. In high school, I saved for a used laptop by babysitting every Saturday. 2 weeks before school, Dad borrowed the cash to cover a repair on the minivan. "Family first," he said, ruffling my hair. I nodded and used the library computers. Kylie got a brand new phone for safety. It wasn't always loud abuse. It was tiny edits to reality. The kind that make you second-guess yourself. A joke here, a favor there, "You're so mature, you can handle it." I handled it until I didn't know what normal looked like anymore. The latest favor came 2 months ago. Mom brewed sweet tea and sat me at the kitchen table. The good tablecloth. "Emma, honey," she began, voice soft. "Kylie found an apartment near campus. She just needs a co-signer for a year. It would help her stay in school." Dad chimed in. "Your credit's spotless. Ours is complicated." Kylie stared at her nails, then glanced up with that practiced, helpless look. I remember my chest tightening. I also remember saying yes. Automatic. Like muscle memory. I'll help, I heard myself say. But the lease has to be clean. No surprises. They all nodded fast, like bobbleheads. Of course, sweetheart, Mom said, already texting someone. Since then, I'd been quietly paying small things. The overdue electric bill, just this once. A last-minute $250 application fee that somehow appeared. A tuition deposit. I told myself it was a loan. I kept receipts, rationalizations, and a polite smile. Back in the parking lot, my phone buzzed. Group text. A blurry photo of the cake, Dad's arms around Mom, Kylie throwing up a peace sign. Family fun, the caption read. My throat tightened so suddenly I coughed. I called Aunt Carol. She's not technically my aunt, she's Mom's cousin, but she's the only one who ever pulled me aside to whisper, "You're not crazy, you're just the responsible one." She picked up on the second ring. "Emmy?" It said, "Congratulations, loser," I whispered. "On the cake." Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "Oh, honey. I think they wanted me there for the photo," I said. "For the record." "Not for me." Aunt Carol's voice shifted steel under velvet. "You don't owe them humiliation to earn a seat at your own celebration." I stared at the moths. "I co-signed Kylie's lease." "Can you undo it?" she asked, careful, like stepping over glass. I looked at my shaking hands. "Maybe." Another memory surfaced. Professor Alvarez, my advisor, once said, "Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with locks. You decide who gets a key." I had handed my family a master key years ago. Tonight, I felt for the lock. I ended the call and opened my notes app. A list. What I'm responsible for versus what I'm not. The second column stayed blank for a long time. Then, one by one, I started to type. A gust of wind rattled the trees. I breathed in. And then, I snapped into focus. Tomorrow, I'd call the landlord. Tonight, I would sleep finally without my phone face up, waiting to rescue anyone. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. My head was buzzing, not from anxiety, but from this strange, almost unfamiliar energy. Resolve. I made coffee, sat at my tiny kitchen table, and pulled up the lease agreement on my laptop. There it was, my name, right under Kylie's XEATS, and just below, the clause about co-signer responsibility. My stomach tightened, but this time, I didn't push the feeling away. I dialed Mr. Patel, the property manager. He answered with the kind of cautious politeness landlords keep ready. "Miss Walker?" "Yes," I said, steady. "I need to discuss removing myself as a co-signer from my sister's lease." "Vor." He hesitated. "Is there a reason?" "She misrepresented her ability to pay," I replied, "and I was pressured into signing under false pretenses." There was a pause, then the faint scratch of a pen. "Technically, you can be removed if the primary tenant fails to meet our criteria without you. That would void the lease." I didn't even flinch. "Then proceed." He promised to email confirmation within the day. When I hung up, I exhaled so hard it felt like I'd been holding that breath for years. Next came the quiet cuts. I logged into the utility account and deleted my payment method. I opened the transfer history every just this once payment and stared at the total. It was a lot. Enough to fund a vacation I'd never taken. My hands trembled as I closed each account. By lunchtime, I was staring at a blank checking app. No more autopay for Kylie's tuition deposit. No more temporary electric bill rescues. The phone calls started within hours. First, Mom's sweet voice cranked up like she was talking to a customer. Honey. Mr. Patel says there's some confusion about the lease?" "Not confusion," I said. "Correction." "Emma," she sighed. "You know your sister's trying to get her degree. She needs stability." "She had stability," I said. "She just used it to mock me in front of half the neighborhood." Silence. Then, "It was just a joke." I almost laughed. "If it was funny, why did only the three of you laugh?" That night, Dad called. No pretense in his voice. "You're making a mistake. Family means stepping up." "I have," I said. "For years, this is me stepping back." He scoffed. "This is about a cake? Grow up." I closed my eyes. "It's about every cake, every comment, every time you taught me my worth was conditional." Click. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time, phone still in my hand. Then I set it down. opened the blinds, and let the late afternoon sun flood in. My phone buzzed again. Kylie. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on some music, something upbeat, and started cleaning. Not just the dishes or counters. I pulled open drawers, tossed old junk, shredded expired paperwork. It felt symbolic. By the time I went to bed, my apartment was lighter, and so was I. The following week, the calls didn't just continue, they multiplied. Morning, lunch break, late at night. If I didn't answer, they left voicemails, long ones. By Thursday, my inbox had 3 from Dad alone. The first was pure anger. You're ruining your sister's future. Do you think she can just bounce back from this? The second tried guilt. I work double shifts for you, Emma. This is how you repay me? The third quieter, colder was just. We'll remember this. Mom's messages were different. She cycled between pleading and pity. Honey, you know Kylie's been under so much stress. She didn't mean the cake thing. Then, an hour later, I just don't understand why you're being so unkind. And Kylie? Hers were short. Demands. Fix this. You know I can't get another lease in time. Just call him back, Emma. By Friday night, I stopped checking my phone after 8 p.m. That's when I got a text from Aunt Carol. Call me when you can. It's about your parents. When I rang, she didn't waste time. I overheard your mom at choir practice, she said. She told Marlene that you were supposed to cover Kylie's tuition this semester, entirely, and that's why they can't understand your change of heart. My stomach dropped. Supposed to? I never agreed to that. I know, Carol said. But Emma, this isn't new. Remember when you were 19 and suddenly on that family cell plan? Or when your name ended up on the minivan loan? I remembered. The cell plan that tanked my credit for a year. The minivan payments I didn't even know I was making until my bank account dipped. Each time, they'd promised to fix it, and each time, I'd cleaned up the mess myself. It's a pattern, Carol continued. They've been leaning on you because you're reliable. Reliable becomes invisible until you stop. I didn't speak for a long moment. My hands were gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. Then I guess it's time they see me. Saturday morning, I got an email from Mr. Patel confirming the lease termination. No drama, no questions, just business. Kylie was officially without housing in 2 weeks unless she found another co-signer. That afternoon, I ran into Mrs. Green, our neighbor, at the grocery store. She hesitated in the cereal aisle before saying, Emma, I was at the party. I didn't know what to say. That cake. She stopped, eyes darting away. You could have said it wasn't funny, I said, not unkindly. Her cheeks reddened. You're right. Lie. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Sadness that no one had spoken up in that moment. Relief that I finally had. That night, I sat on my balcony, city lights flickering in the distance. My phone buzzed with another unknown number. I let it ring out. I was done answering calls meant to pull me back into a role I never chose. In the quiet, I realized something. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. By Monday, the silence in my apartment felt different. Not empty, spacious, like a room that had been overstuffed for years and finally got cleared out. That morning, I got an email from Professor Alvarez, my old college advisor. Heard about your graduation party from Carol, want to grab coffee? We met at a quiet cafe downtown. He was already there, a stack of papers beside him, glasses sliding down his nose. Emma, he said warmly, you look lighter. I laughed softly. That's one word for it. No. Over cappuccinos, I told him the whole story, the cake, the lease, the phone calls. He listened without interrupting, just nodding now and then. When I finished, he leaned back. That wasn't a joke. That was a public reminder of the role they expect you to play, and you changed the script. I stared at my cup. It still feels unnatural. Like I'm breaking a rule I didn't know was there. Of course it does, he said. You've been trained to think your worth comes from fixing their problems. Now you're giving them the discomfort of solving their own. That stuck with me, the discomfort part. I'd been so afraid of making them uncomfortable, but they'd built my whole life around mine. After coffee, I stopped by my office to pick up some papers and ended up talking to HR about our therapy benefits. By the end of the day, I'd booked my first session for Wednesday. The therapist's office was warm, sunlight spilling across a big rug. She asked why I was there. I told her I wanted to stop being the family's safety net, that I wanted to know who I was without that role. She smiled gently. That's a good place to start. That week, I also made small changes. I turned my phone off during meals. I blocked Kylie on social media, not out of spite, but so I wouldn't see her vague, passive-aggressive posts. I rearranged my apartment, moving my desk to face the window. On Friday night, instead of driving to my parents' for the usual family dinner, I went to a rooftop trivia night with friends from work. Halfway through, my phone buzzed with Mom's name. I let it go to voicemail. Later, on the train home, I listened to the message. "Emma, I just don't understand why you're shutting us out. We're family." Her voice cracked a little. "Kylie's having a hard time." I sat there watching the city blur past. For years, that tone would have made me cave. This time, I didn't even reach for a reply. When I got home, I opened a fresh notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "You are not their backup plan." Then, underneath, "You get to choose your own emergencies." And for the first time in years, I slept without my phone beside me. 2 weeks later, the fallout hit. It started with a frantic voicemail from Dad. "They're kicking her out, Emma. Kylie's packing her stuff. She can't stay on campus. She doesn't have the credits without this semester's tuition. You need to fix this." I was in the middle of making pasta. I set the phone down on the counter and let his voice fade under the sound of boiling water. The next day, Mom called during my lunch break. "Emma, she's your sister. She's sleeping in her car right now. This isn't you." I cut her off. "It is me. This is me choosing not to save her at my expense." Bye. There was a pause. And then her voice shifted, pleading turning to sharpness. "So you're just going to let her fail? After all we've done for you?" I almost laughed. "All you've done for me?" "Mom, you took my savings for your emergencies. You put loans in my name, and you made me the punchline at my own party." She gasped softly, like I'd said something forbidden. "It was just a joke, I know, you've told me." That night, Kylie texted from an unknown number. "You've ruined my life. Hope you're happy." I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it without replying. I wasn't going to feed the fire. The following Sunday, I skipped church for the first time in years. Aunt Carol came by in the afternoon with a casserole because that's how she shows care. She sat at my table, sipping coffee, and said, "They're angry because you've broken the pattern. They'll try every angle to get you back in it." "What happens if I don't?" I asked. She shrugged. "They adapt. Or they double down. Either way, you've made your choice." That week, Mr. Patel emailed again. Kylie had officially vacated the apartment. The balance due was her responsibility, not mine. I read the email twice, letting it sink in. There would be no surprise bills showing up in my mailbox. Friday night, there was a knock at my door. I hesitated, then opened it to find Dad standing there. No smile, no charm, just tired eyes. "Emma," he said, "we need to talk." "One, I don't think we do," I replied. He exhaled through his nose. "She's back at the house. She's not enrolled anymore. You could have prevented this." "I could have," I said, "but it's not my job." For a moment, I thought he might yell. Instead, he just shook his head, muttered, "You'll regret this," and walked away. I closed the door, leaned against it, and felt steady. Like my feet were planted in cement I'd poured myself. That night, I cooked dinner for one, played my favorite album, and didn't once check my phone. It felt like breathing fresh air after years in a stale room. Autumn came early that year. The mornings turned crisp, leaves trading their green for burnt orange and deep red. From my studio window, I could see the skyline framed by the season like the city was dressing up just for me. Aunt Carol called one afternoon with an update I didn't ask for. "Kylie's working part-time at the diner near your parents' place. Your mom says she's finding her footing." I just said, "Good," and left it at that. The truth was, I didn't want the play-by-play anymore. For months, my identity had been wrapped around their crises, their chaos. Now, My days were my own. I went to therapy once a week. I signed up for a ceramics class. I hosted trivia nights in my apartment building's lounge. One Saturday, I ran into Mrs. Green again at the farmer's market. She smiled sheepishly. I've been meaning to say, I should have spoken up at your party. It wasn't right. I nodded. It would have meant a lot. I'll remember next time, she said, squeezing my arm before heading off. Her words stuck with me not because I needed her apology, but because it reminded me how silence can hurt as much as the joke itself. I still thought about my family sometimes, but it was different now. The ache was duller, less urgent. I didn't lie awake wondering if I should call or if I was being too harsh. I'd made my choice. One evening, I pulled out an old plastic bin from the back of my closet, the one stuffed with participation ribbons, spelling bee certificates, and the crayon drawings I used to tape to the fridge before Kylie's took their place. I sat cross-legged on the floor, sifting through them. Some memories made me smile. Others made my chest tighten. When I reached the bottom, I found a photo from my high school graduation, me in my cap and gown, standing just a step behind the rest of the family. Almost like I wasn't sure I belonged in the frame. I set the picture on my desk. A reminder not of where I came from, but of how far I'd moved forward. That night, I wrote a short list in my notebook. Boundaries I won't break. I will not co-sign for anyone without full consent and transparency. I will not let mockery hide behind the word joke. I will not be guilted into carrying someone else's load. When I finished, I closed the notebook and slid it into the drawer. The next day, Aunt Carol texted a photo from another family gathering. No caption, just faces. I noticed my seat at the table was empty, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. Looking back, I don't regret a single choice I made that night or in the weeks after. Walking away from that party wasn't just about a cake. It was about every moment I let myself be the family's safety net while they pulled the rug out from under me. Every time I was told to be gracious while my achievements were turned into someone else's punchline. I learned that boundaries aren't punishments, they're self-respect in action. Yes, it was uncomfortable. Yes, it changed how my family sees me. But it also changed how I see myself. I'm not their backup plan anymore. Do I still care about them? Of course. I just care about myself too, and that's not selfish, it's necessary. Sometimes, love means letting people face the consequences of their own choices, and sometimes, walking away is the only way to finally stand tall. What would you do if your own family mocked your biggest achievement and still expected you to rescue them? Am I wrong for cutting them off, at least for now? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more family revenge stories like this one, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Your next favorite story is just one click away.